Hello, it's Elsa. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Anyways, today's video, I am going to be telling you guys about some of this video is going to be for people who are considering traveling to New York City or who are traveling to New York City. Because I live in New York City, I feel like I have some tips to tell you about coming here, but mostly I'm going to talk about all of the places that you might hear about when it comes to traveling to New York City, and if those places are going to be worth it or if you should not waste your time on them. And also some other maybe less recommended places that are really good places to travel in the city, or things that I think you should do or visit, because there's like a lot of stuff to do here. So first I'm going to start with all of the typical places that you probably hear people talk about a lot when they talk about traveling to New York City or places to go in New York City. The first one is the Empire State Building. I feel like this is like a given, and because of that, like, if you feel like going up the Empire State Building because everyone does it, like, go ahead. Otherwise, I think you can just go into the lobby and see like the lobby and, you know, the fancy elevator doors and all of that stuff without having to pay to go up. But to actually go up to the top, you do get a really good view of the city. But I think it costs like, I want to say it costs like $30 or $40 or something, which is just kind of a lot in my opinion, just to go up to the top of the building. I don't know. The view is really, really good, but because of the price, I'm not sure if it's totally worth it. But it is kind of like a New York City staple, so I think you have to just, you know, do with that information what you want and decide for yourself. The next thing is the Statue of Liberty. Now, there's kind of like two ways to do the Statue of Liberty. You can take the ferry from, oh my gosh, I don't even know like what it's called. The ferry right from the bottom of Manhattan. So you can take a free ferry from the tip of Manhattan across to New Jersey and back again. And if you get on at New York and you sit on the right side of the ferry, you see the Statue of Liberty pretty close as you go by, and that's really nice, and it's free. So that's a really good thing to do. And then you can just like take it back right away when you land at New Jersey. You know, it's pretty simple. There is also, though, the Statue of Liberty Island. So you can actually go to the island that it's on, and then you could, you know, you can be really close to it and like climb up. Although I think sometimes you can't climb up depending on what they're doing over there, or maybe the weather or whatever. I have never climbed up the Statue of Liberty, but it is a goal of mine. I think one of these days I'm gonna like go over and do it as long as it's open, just because, I don't know, I want to see what it looks like from the top, and I haven't done that. But unless you really have a goal to climb up the Statue of Liberty, I don't think you really want to go to the island. You're like so close to the statue that you can't really see it that well anyway. And I don't know about, the last time I was on the Statue of Liberty Island was for a school trip, so I don't know about the price, but I feel like you do have to pay to take a ferry to that island, where the other one where you can see it nicely from farther away is free. So why wouldn't you just do that one? So that's that. Ellis Island I have on my list. I also did this on a school trip, and I'm not sure how we got there, to be honest. I do remember that there was a really nice skyline view of the city, but mostly we just went there to see kind of like how the island functioned back when it was used, and there are places where you can kind of like look up your ancestry, I think, which is cool. I did not do any of that. I would really just recommend Ellis Island if you really want to see that, you know, the history of it, if you really enjoy history and that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be very interesting for you. So, yeah. Next is Grand Central. I believe it's called Grand Central Terminal, not Grand Central Station, but I actually don't even know. But it's, you know, if you've seen like the Madagascar movies, the scene where the old lady is like hitting the lion with her purse, that's in Grand Central Terminal with like the green ceiling and the constellations and stuff. I mean, there's not really anything to do in there unless you want to. There's not really anything to do in there unless you want to like just look or like maybe get a quick lunch or something, because there are a lot of little quick places to eat in the bottom because it's like a big train terminal and a big subway station. There's a little bit of shopping, but like not really. But yeah, it is really pretty in there, and I think it's a big part of New York history, and it's free to just walk in and look, and it's kind of, I mean, it's not like way out of the way. So I think I would recommend going in to look. I guess this is another one where like if you appreciate the architecture or if you just want to see this like important piece of New York history, then you should go and see it. Otherwise, it's not really a big deal. And then the next thing I have is Rockefeller Center. So this is where like Radio City Music Hall is. It's where they put up the huge Christmas tree during Christmas. There's a lot of shopping. There's this big Rockefeller Center itself is like a building, and there's like several underground levels where there's lots of shopping and little restaurants and things. I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's like a tiny ice skating rink during the winter, like under the Christmas tree. I think this is a pretty touristy location, so maybe try not to go when it's super touristy, but I think for sure if you're in New York close to Christmas, like in the month of December, you should totally go to see the tree because it is really, really pretty. I would not recommend going here to go ice skating because the rink is very small. I have also been to see the Rockettes at Radio City Hall, and Radio City Hall itself is really nice and really pretty. So if you are considering like seeing a show there for something that you're excited about, I would recommend it. Yeah, the inside of Radio City Hall is actually gorgeous. Yeah, Rockefeller, I think I would recommend, even though it's pretty touristy. I feel like it is pretty, so it's touristy for a good reason. And there is like shopping and things to do there. So I think it's a good place that you can go. Next, I have the One World Trade Center and the Oculus, which is like the mall thing that they built next to it. One World Trade Center is obviously super historically important. You can't actually go in the building unless you like work in there because the security is super tight. There's also the reflecting pools in like the building footprints of where the Twin Towers were before they fell, and those are really, really like special, I guess. It's very impactful to see them, so I would recommend going to see the reflecting pools. Even if you don't have like a close connection to 9/11 or anyone who was involved in that, it's really impactful to see. And then the Oculus is a really cool thing that they built next to it. It's a mall on the inside, and it has some good stores for shopping if you want to shop. But otherwise, even if you just want to look at the architecture, it's this weird like, I think it's built to look like you're inside a whale, maybe. It looks like a big rib cage, almost. It's just like white. I don't know. It's super cool. From the inside, there's tons of natural light, and it looks cool from the outside, too. I would recommend going to One World Trade to see the reflected pools and the Oculus. Next, something that I'm sure you've heard about, a place I'm sure you've heard about, Times Square. Times Square for New Yorkers, I feel like it's like a joke. Like, even if you've only lived here for like 2 weeks, you could probably have been here for 2 weeks. Or even you might have visited here once and you would know that Times Square is like not really a place that you want to visit. It's super busy all the time. The stores are not that great, you know? People say like, oh, let's go shopping at Times Square. It's not super great shopping. And there's like people trying to sell you things everywhere on the street, you know? It's not a fun time for me. If you really want to go and see the big billboards, sure, go ahead, get pictures or whatever. But I would not recommend going to Times Square unless you specifically want like that vibe of literal chaos and like the Times Square signs. But it's just, I don't know, no one really likes it, I would say. There you go, there's my opinion on Times Square. The New York Public Library you can go into for free, and it is gorgeous in there. It looks like a museum. You know, it's all marble and just super, super pretty. And I think they don't have the like actual rooms to study or read open all the time, because I have been there before where I haven't been able to get in to actually read or study, but they do sometimes, and I mean, they're gorgeous. So I would say if you enjoy architecture, again, there's a lot of architecture in New York. Or if, you know, you're a book person, you really like to read, I would recommend going to the New York Public Library just to see it, and maybe just go in there and read for like half an hour in like the gorgeous rooms that they have in there. I love libraries, so I really, really enjoy the public library. And then we have museums in general. I specifically only feel like I can talk about the Met, or the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because I haven't really been to any of the other museums here, which I really need to get on because there's a lot of museums to visit. But the Met it's right next to Central Park, first of all, so that's gorgeous. The museum itself is huge. Like, I've been there 2 or 3 times now, and like have not even seen probably a quarter of the collection. And you can go through like a month apart, you could go through the same section of the museum, and they might have different pieces up, so you know, you have to look through it again. It's so gorgeous. You have to pay admission to get into the Met. But yeah, you can also go up to the roof on the Met and see like the city skyline and Central Park on the side, and it's super, super gorgeous. Also, right around the Met, there's a bunch of really old houses, like mansions basically, but they're city mansions, you know, so it's like a few stories high and like with all the super pretty like facades and architecture on the outside, which I love. And there are also, if you go to the Met, or probably a lot of the museums here, there's pieces that you recognize. Like, they have like Van Goghs at the Met, and like Monets and Picassos, like these like famous artists. You can actually see their work, which is super cool. Yes, and then we'll go to Central Park, since Central Park is right next to the Met, and it is seriously huge. There's so much to explore in Central Park, and you can go into the middle of Central Park and like look around you, like turn in a circle, and you can't see any of the city at all, because they've like engineered, there was like a park engineer who planned it so that when you were in the park, you can't really tell that you're in the middle of this giant city, which is amazing and super cool. Like I said, there's a lot of different places to explore. There's like bridges and fountains and like specific monuments to specific people in there. So if you are in New York and it's a nice day, go and walk around Central Park for sure. I think it's gorgeous. And then, you know, it's a thing where people are like, oh, Central Park in New York, like it's a big thing. So if you can say that you've been there, I think it's pretty cool. And then this last thing on my list of like popular New York City places is the Brooklyn Bridge. A lot of people like to walk out onto the Brooklyn Bridge or walk across it. I've walked across it or run across it many times. So it is a really gorgeous bridge, super pretty architecture. And if you walk out, you know, if you're in the middle, you can get a great view of the Brooklyn skyline, a great view of the Manhattan skyline. I guess I should say this. Every single thing I've mentioned so far has been in Manhattan. The Brooklyn Bridge connects Manhattan to Brooklyn, and the Manhattan Bridge also connects Manhattan to Brooklyn, but it's a little bit further northwest, I guess, just further up the two islands. So if you're on the Brooklyn Bridge, you can see the Manhattan Bridge, and also you can see Manhattan skyline and Brooklyn skyline. And yeah, I think the Brooklyn Bridge is really good for walking. They have it so it's very pedestrian friendly. If you are gonna walk it, I would say go early in the morning before it's busy, because when Brooklyn Bridge is busy, if you're a walker and you want to walk fast, or if you want to take pictures and have room to take pictures, you're not going to be able to, because it gets really like busy up there. I've tried to run across it before after like 10 a.m. and it's just packed because tourists love to walk on it because it's gorgeous. If you want a view of the Brooklyn Bridge, you can walk on the Manhattan Bridge, which there's one side for walking and one side for biking. Make sure you walk on the walk side, because bikers will get really mad at you. I have made that mistake before. But if you walk, the walk side of the Brooklyn Bridge is the walk side of the Manhattan Bridge is facing the Brooklyn Bridge, so you can get a really pretty shot of the Brooklyn Bridge and like the lower Manhattan skyline, and that is really pretty. And the funny thing, I think this is funny, but the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge come out only like a few blocks apart in Brooklyn. But in Manhattan, the Manhattan Bridge comes out in Chinatown, and the Brooklyn Bridge comes out near like City Hall and like the government buildings, almost close to like Wall Street. I would recommend walking the Brooklyn Bridge if you want pictures of the Brooklyn Bridge. Obviously you could walk on the Brooklyn Bridge and take them there, or if you want like an actual shot of the whole bridge, walk the Manhattan Bridge and you can get a really nice one. That's a good transition into, I have a section called outside or walking things. So these are things that are not necessarily super popular or super famous to do in New York, but you know, they're just nice things that you can do outside in the city. If it's really nice and you want to walk around, get outside, you know, explore, see some of the architecture. So, first thing is called the High Line. It used to be a subway line. It's above ground, and they transformed it into this walkway. So it's along the east side of Manhattan, and there are like probably 4 or 5 entrances on streets. You can look them up if you look up like the High Line, New York City, whatever, and you take a staircase, or I think there are elevators up to this High Line, and it's probably like 2 or 3 stories above street level, and you can just walk it like it's just like a path. There's no traffic, no bikes. You can see actually a lot of times the New Jersey skyline, but also just like, you know, the buildings around you. Yeah, there's like a mall along it that's really nice. If you go to the bottom, there's this really cool, actually that's the next thing on my list, this cool park called Little Island, which I will talk about. But yes, the High Line it's a really nice place to walk outside if you enjoy getting outside and being active. The next thing, as I said, is Little Island. It's on Pier 55 in Manhattan, or maybe it's off of Pier 55, but it's close to that. And it's this super, I think I have pictures of it, so maybe I'll like put them up here. But it's this super weird park thing where there's a lot of like steps and like long pathways, like uphill, and it's almost like these like mushroom shaped things, and it's kind of like out over the water, but there's like trees and grass and like, I don't know, it's like super, it's weird to explain, but it's super pretty. It's a really pretty park. I've been there a couple of times because I just have ended up over there, and it's just really pretty, so I go and like sit and look at it. Yeah, like sit near it or on it or just walk around it because it's super pretty. So if you end up on the High Line on the lower side, you could check that out if you want to do some more outdoor activities, because that's a really pretty spot. Next thing, you probably have heard of this. Coney Island is a fast food restaurant chain, but also an actual spot in New York City. It's actually in Brooklyn, which is the first thing that I've mentioned that's in Brooklyn. It's down on like, I guess it's probably like the southernmost kind of area in Brooklyn. So the place right next to Coney Island that I've been to is Brighton Beach. You don't really think of New York City as like a beach place, but it is right on the ocean. And Brighton Beach is just like a super nice sandy beach, and it is gorgeous. When I was there, which was in like September, Coney Island is right on the water as well. But that is really, if you're doing mostly touristy things, that's kind of going to be out of the way for you. So that's really just if you have like time, and if you're going or coming to the city in like a nice time of the year, like over the summer. I would say probably like July, August, September. I mean, I'm sure the ocean is really, really cold in June. It's probably pretty cold all the time, but like more so in June before it's warmed up a lot. Next is Soho. I really love Soho. It's kind of touristy now. Probably like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, which obviously I was like not in New York 15 years ago. I was 3. But from what I've gathered, it used to be not as popular as it is now. And like a long time ago, it used to be a place where artists would buy like cheap studio apartments to work in. And now it's like one of the probably most expensive places to live in Manhattan. I don't know about that. I haven't fact checked that. But it feels right. It feels right to me. But in Soho, there's a ton of super pretty architecture. Like the apartment buildings and houses there are so pretty. I don't know, it's my favorite kind of like style of building where it's classic. There's like the classic brownstones or just really pretty buildings. So I love looking at them. And also, there is good shopping in Soho. If you want to go shopping, go to Soho, not Times Square. Now, it's busy in Soho too, because, you know, people know about it now and it's popular. Like, sometimes the sidewalks will literally be very busy. So try to go, if you want to walk around the shopping parts of Soho, try to go at a time when not a lot of people are going to be shopping. Like maybe if you're in New York for longer than just a weekend, go on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, maybe, or even afternoon of the like probably like as close to the middle of the week as you can get rather than the weekends, because the weekends it's going to be busier. But yeah, if you want to do good shopping, that's, I would say, is the place to do it. And the architecture is pretty. So I do like Soho. Even though it's pretty popular now, it's very nice. Now let's go into some specific things. Maybe if you have a specific type of interest, you might want to do these things, but otherwise maybe not. First thing is the fashion district, or mood specifically. I don't know how many people watched Project Runway. I think it's still going actually. But my mom loved Project Runway, so my mom and my sisters and I would watch it all the time. And they always would do their fabric shopping at Mood. And Mood is obviously an actual place in New York, like an actual fabric store, and you can go in and like look, and it's, I guess, just if you're interested in like clothes or fashion or sewing, this is for you. But it's like several, I think it's 2, maybe 3 floors of fabric, and there's so much. It's just packed. When I was there, Swatch, the dog from Project Runway, was there, and I saw him. I'm not sure if he would be anymore, because when I saw him at Mood, that was 2017, so unfortunately Swatch is probably not around anymore, which is very sad. But yeah, if you're interested in sewing or fashion or clothes, check out Mood, check out the Fashion District, which is kind of like that area. There's a lot of like fashion schools around too, so you will probably see a lot of people dressed very cool around there, which is always fun. Next, Broadway shows. I feel like you hear about Broadway in New York, and it's kind of like when I was younger, I thought that Broadway was just one specific street, and all of these theaters were just like lined up on the street, which was Broadway, which is not really the case. There is a street that's called Broadway. It runs north-south, and it merges up with, I want to say 6th or 7th Avenue. I'm not totally sure. But all of the theaters are not right on the street that is Broadway. A lot of them are close to Times Square. But anyways, Broadway shows in general, there are a lot of like ticket lotteries that you can enter if you want the chance to get cheaper tickets. I've seen Hamilton, which was amazing. I have seen Wicked, which was absolutely incredible. Wicked is one of my favorite shows. I've seen The Lion King, which I did not like as much as the other 2, but also Hamilton and Wicked are like typically seen as crazy good, so I think those are the only 3 I've seen. But I mean, even The Lion King, which I didn't like as much, was incredible. So if you have the chance to see a Broadway show, I would recommend it, because they are all really good. And then you can say that you've been to a Broadway show, you know? Next is The Strand. If you're a book lover, you've probably heard of this bookstore before. It's like the biggest independent bookstore in New York, or maybe in the US altogether. It's like 4 stories, I think. They have used books, they have new books, they have like music, and you know, they have like kids books, young adult books, fiction, nonfiction, all kinds of stuff. I love The Strand. It's super gorgeous, super good selection of books. The only thing I would say about it is it gets super packed in there. Like, it will literally be like hard on the main floor. It will be like hard to like walk, because there's so many people in there. You can't like get where you need to go, which can be really stressful, especially if you get stressed in crowds. If you get stressed in crowds, I would not recommend The Strand at all, unless you're gonna like go in and make a beeline like straight for upstairs or downstairs, because it's much less busy if you go up or down. But on the main floor, it's packed. But it is a really nice bookstore, and of course I love to support independent bookstores. If you really like books and the crowds aren't going to bother you that much, you can go to The Strand. Following books, the biggest Barnes & Noble in the US, or possibly the world, I don't know. Are there even Barnes & Nobles in other countries? I don't really know. But the biggest Barnes & Noble is in Union Square, which is actually quite close to The Strand. It's like 4, maybe 5 stories. I've been there a couple of times, and there's a lot of books in there. There's a lot of stuff to look at. I feel like when I went, I was maybe a little bit underwhelmed, just because, maybe it was just like the general vibe. Like, it's the same vibe as any other Barnes & Noble, you know? It's just several stories, which maybe for some people that's a good thing. Like, you know, you still have the comfort of a typical Barnes & Noble, but just like there's so much more to look at, which might be nice. And they do definitely have a bigger selection of books, which is really cool. You know, if you have the urge to do that, if you really are a book lover, you can definitely go, but otherwise, I think sticking with your typical Barnes & Noble is probably okay. You're not missing out on a ton if you don't go to that one. Another sort of bookish thing is the Harry Potter store. If you really are a Harry Potter fan, definitely 100% go to the Harry Potter store. You will freak out the first time you go in because it's so cool. There's like so much stuff to look at. Like it's really cool in there, honestly. Similar to the Strand, it gets really busy in here. Not as busy the Strand. Sometimes it's literally like you can't walk because there's so many people. I feel like Harry Potter does not get quite that busy, but it still will be pretty busy in there. Unless you go, I don't know, maybe like right when it opens. It's really cool in there. You can get like chocolate frogs with the cards, you know, Bernie Bot's every flavor beans. They have like every character wand imaginable, all the robes and stuff. It's really cool in there. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, definitely go. And then the last specific interest thing I have on here, I guess is not really necessarily a specific interest. Food in Chinatown I have, which, I don't know, I feel like you hear about Chinatown kind of. It's kind of really like obviously a lot of like Chinese American people live there. I don't know, it's a pretty like bustling, busy area of Manhattan. It's right at the bottom of Manhattan, like I said, where the Manhattan Bridge comes out into Manhattan. Chinese food, when you're actually in Chinatown, it's real Chinese food, is really, really good. So if you like food, if you like Asian food specifically, Chinese food specifically, try it out because it's really good. Okay, that's all of the specific interest things. Now a section on Brooklyn. The only thing I mentioned so far that's actually in Brooklyn are the ends of the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge, and then Coney Island and Brighton Beach. So here's a few specific things that you can do in Brooklyn. First thing is the Brooklyn Promenade. I think it's Promenade. Or like the Brooklyn Piers, which are right in like Brooklyn Heights. The Promenade is like situated up. It's almost like on top of the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, which is a highway. And you get this gorgeous view of Lower Manhattan and the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's just this long kind of like walkway with benches and a rail and whatever. And you can see the Statue of Liberty in the distance, Governor's Island, which I don't even know what's on Governor's Island, to be honest. I should probably make my way over there sometime. Lower Manhattan, you can see like all of it, and it's super pretty. And then if you go down on the end, you get into like the piers. So there's like little tiny beaches where you could walk into the water, which I would not really recommend because it's like the Hudson River, which is, or maybe it's the East River. I don't know the rivers. I apologize. I really should. I feel like it's the Hudson River. Let me look. It's not the Hudson River. Yeah, it's the East River, guys. I apologize. I don't know New York as well as I should. Anyways, the East River is still dirty. So, I would not recommend going into the water there. But the piers, there's like basketball courts, this weird like tree, like these trees that they have growing on a pier. You can like walk through it almost like a maze. And it's really pretty down there. Super pretty view of the Manhattan skyline again. You can go out and be like right over the water, which is super pretty, so yeah. Then in Brooklyn you also have Prospect Park. The park was, I believe, designed by the same person as Central Park. So it has that feeling of when you're in the middle, you can't really see the city around you. It's, again, just a gorgeous place to be outside, you know? Yeah. And then the last thing I have for Brooklyn specifically is Dumbo. Dumbo stands for down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass, which is a little bit redundant and silly, but someone named it that. But it's the area of Brooklyn that's really kind of, I want to say popular or like modern. I don't know, there's like things to see and do, and it's kind of like cute. There's a lot of places if you're down in Dumbo, which obviously is, as I said, under the Manhattan Bridge or in that area. There's a lot of little places to shop, to like get, you know, a cute, tasty meal. There's a really cute ice cream shop down there, and you can walk along, like right along the East River, kind of under the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges, and get, again, a really good view of Manhattan. That's a really cute and pretty area as well. Last little thing I want to talk about, this is getting really long, is transport. You basically have 3 categories. You can take a taxi, you can take public transport like a bus or a subway, or you can take like an Uber or a Lyft. For me, I get carsick really stupid easily. So I've never been in a car in New York City for longer than like 15 minutes and not started to feel really awful. Like, I really cannot do cars in New York City. So for me, the subway is a really good option, and also the subway is so much less expensive than a car. A lot of people think that the subway system in New York is really confusing or hard to navigate, but if you look at the maps, you get the MTA app so you can see if a train is not running, and you just look at the signs that tell you if you're going downtown or uptown, I think you'll be able to figure it out. You know, you can look up on your maps on your phone like where a subway station is. If you're okay with walking a little bit, you know, to get on and get off, then it's gonna be fine. And the subway is $2.75 a ride, and that includes transfers if you have to transfer to a different train, which I maybe would not recommend if you've never ridden a subway before, or like that kind of public transport. It can be a little bit confusing to transfer, but you know, it's a really cost-efficient way to travel in the city. Otherwise, taxis or Ubers and Lyfts, I would say, honestly, I don't really know the cost difference between them. I feel like they must be similar because people still use both. I would say if you're in a busier area, I would recommend using a taxi because it's really easy, I feel like, to just not be able to find your Uber or Lyft person like when they arrive. So if you're in a busier area, like going from a busier area, I would recommend just finding a taxi. You know, if you like wait on the side of the street and like wave at them as they go by, one of them will stop, you know. That's just how taxis work. Otherwise, if you're in, you know, a quieter area, leaving from a quieter area, an Uber or a Lyft, I would recommend over a taxi just because of like simplicity. But if you're in a busy area, that's going to be really confusing to find, I think, so I'd recommend a taxi. Yeah, do with that information what you will. All right, that's all I have today, as I've literally been talking for like over an hour about New York City. I hope that this is helpful to you guys. I wanted to share this because, you know, I feel like it's nice to hear about these things from someone who knows it somewhat well. And, you know, I've only been here for, I don't know, like 7 months? 6, 7 months? It's only been like 6, 7, I don't know. No, it has been like 7. Yeah. So anyways, I just hope that this is helpful to you as you are thinking about, you know, what you want to do. Obviously, look at other lists of things to do as well. If you have plans, if you wanted to do one of the things that I recommended kind of not to do, do it. Like, none of these places are going to, like, it's not going to injure you to go there. It's not going to, like, ruin your whole trip. So you know, if you're planning on doing something, do it. I hope that if you are coming here on a trip soon, you enjoy it. It is a really great city. I really like it here. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you like to listen to me talk, check out one of my other videos or subscribe to my channel. I really enjoy talking to you guys and making videos. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.